Howdy folks, I am Ruskiel, and welcome back to Let's Play Danganronpa 2 Goodbye Despair. In the last one, we finished off our investigation into Mahiru's murder, and I was going to do something a bit different for this episode, but it all came crashing down. I spent a couple days recording and a couple days editing, and then I went through part of it and said, well, this is trash, and so I just threw it all away. So instead, we'll just do the episode mostly normal, although I do want to kind of summarize my thoughts on the whole case before we get started. Anyway, so we're heading into Monokuma Rock in order to actually get to the beginning of the trial. So, what else we got going on? Man, admittedly, it has been a really long while since I've been here, since I've done this. Because, I recorded basically the entire investigation in one go way back when, so I could try to do this whole idea that I had, and it just wasn't going well. So, I'm just kind of maybe not in the right mindset right now. Anyway, no, let me go! Help me! He's gonna do something crazy to me. I'll be ruined.
Hey, shut up and stay put, you stubborn little Lolita.
Hey, stop harassing little girls. This is what's going on. What's happening?
Yoko was trying to run away, so Monokuma brought her by force. But Hyoko's still trying to run away, so Monokuma's trying to wrap her in a full Nelson.
And then there's this. That's right. Between vocabulary like full Nelson and Gapmo, and the whole culture gap between me being a full American and this being Japanese, pretty Japanese, I swear to God, I only understand about 70% of what these people say.
Hey, if you don't stay put, I'm gonna make you part of this island's food chain. Jeez, making me waste my sweet-ass time. But there's another problem I have to deal with besides this one. Where the hell is Fuyuhiko? That guy, he totally ditched my appointment. He pisses me off.
Is he getting hot and bothered over it? Oh, that's right. Yeah. So I also did play through the beginning of this, so I kind of know what's going to happen, but admittedly I forgot about that. His anger changed his form! I'm right here.
Uh-huh.
Fuyuhiko, you came. I was right about you. There's nowhere for me to run anyway, so no matter the ending, I have to accept it, right? But still, I'm a Yakuza. Accepting defeat is not an option. Fuyuhiko, what does that mean?
Well, it's all good. If the trial heats up, it's all good. Anyway, looks like everyone's here, so let us depart now. I'll go first and be one step ahead of you guys.
Oh, crap. I'm not mentally prepared yet. Do you even have to prepare?
If you don't have enough power, harness your latent energy. Come on, bring out that energy.
So it begins! The beginning of the end! Now then, let's keep our spirits high, so we can one day find that shining hope. That's right, moving forward is the only option. Alright, so, I talked to everyone, it was a bunch of filler text, it really wasn't all that interesting, so we'll just get going. Besides, I don't want this to go on too terribly long, and I get the feeling that's probably going to be the case anyway. No matter how many times I see it, it's such bad taste! The worst, slowest, most brutal taste! Somehow, I moved my muscles, stiff from fear and nerves, and awkwardly walked onto the escalator. For some reason, my breathing was short, and I was eventually struck by a feeling similar to dizziness. The moment all of us were inside Monokuma Rock. Now, there's one step on that escalator that seemed like it was much higher in rise momentarily while going up. I caught it out of the corner of my eye. It was weird. It was weirding me out. A rumbling sound filled the room, and the surrounding space began to fall. And we're on our elevator. As it shook with a clatter, the elevator we were inside continued to drop. Throughout that drop, I was fluctuating between feeling hope and despair, as if my heart was a rotten fruit swelling in the sun before it finally goes squish. I suddenly stopped breathing. My consciousness began to fade from the pressure. I tried to endure that pressure by firmly standing on my legs, and after a while, the elevator's vibrations gradually weakened. And then it stopped altogether. And here we have it.
Aim! Defeat the boring routine! So, I've decided to start redecorating. How does it look? Mr. Monokuma's redecoration is awesome, isn't it?
It's kind of half-assed, honestly.
It's not like I'd allow you to think otherwise anyway.
I mean, you got the palm trees, but man, those are some lame-ass curtains that you got up. To go to the trouble of doing something this elaborate, really? What is your true intention?
Nothing, really. Essentially, this killing game is just to kill time anyway.
Kill time?
Oh, to break away from my purpose. That alone is my purpose. A purpose is only going to be a weakness. Those who have a purpose are always the weakest ones in the bunch. That's why you guys should forget about such cheap-ass purposes like trying to survive. And enjoy the class trial from the bottom of your hearts.
It's starting. The class trial is starting. Mahiro Koizumi, the ultimate photographer. She had an unyielding force of personality, but she was actually very good at taking care of people. Most importantly, she was always straightforward. The person that killed her is among us? I don't want to believe it. I don't want to believe it. I don't want to believe it, but... regardless, we need to find the answer. It doesn't matter if you believe it or not. Because it's the only way. Aside from finding out who the killer is, there is no other way for us to survive. And so, this life-threatening trial, billowing with hope and despair, has begun. Okay, so, yep, there's the old file. And I think this is probably where I'm going to go ahead and just kind of cycle through the thoughts that I had on the case. Because like I said, I was trying to determine, or at least see if I could sort of semi-figure out a possibility for how the case is going to go, based on the evidence that we have and the events that we know took place. Because I think it's a little easier to do it with this game, because I don't believe, at least nothing jumps to mind about actually adding new evidence during the course of the trial. Mostly, from what I can recall, all the cases have had the evidence available right from the start. It's just a matter of putting all the pieces together. Anyway, the first big thing, and probably the one that's going to be the most wrong, is I believe that Hiyoko actually played the arcade game first. Now, follow me on my twisted, contorted path of absolute confusion on this one. One thing that kind of goes into this is the first letter that we get. We got the letter that was in the envelope for whoever finished the game first. And if I can find that real quick, yeah, here we go. It goes on about, did I scroll over? Okay, yeah, it goes on about, you know, what you all did to my sister, we'll talk then, and it instructs someone to play the game, but it doesn't say specifically who. So, that's the first thing. It's not addressed to anyone specifically. And then, based on the events, we saw Fuyuhiko with the envelope pretty early on after the game was introduced. I think it was the next morning. And that was supposed to... The fact that he had the envelope and the word sister is intended to make us believe, oh, he played the game first and then handed it off to someone. Since we found it in Mahiru's room, we were supposed to believe that it was handed from Fuyuhiko to Mahiru. Now, what strikes me as odd is the tone of the letter contradicts Fuyuhiko's attitude in general. Fuyuhiko has been hostile and abrasive the entire time we've known him. So why would he suddenly write a letter that isn't just as abrasive and hostile? And the whole, we'll talk then. That, I mean, when does he ever want to talk? So, but yeah, the whole sister thing, that rebukes my thought that if Hiyoko played the game first, then she would have written the letter. The whole sister kind of rebukes that. But if we move on to the arcade game credit rolls, in general, it presented everyone's name in their surnames, with the exception of Hiyoko. Instead of listing Saionji, it listed Hiyoko specifically. Now, my thought is, what if it's a possibility that Sato's name is also not a surname, but in fact a first name? If Sato's a first name, this opens the possibility that Sato is Hiyoko's sister. And then this ties back into making this letter, the first letter in the envelope, it makes it possible so that Hiyoko could write it, which then means it's a possibility that Hiyoko played the game first. Now, that's probably the biggest stretch that I have so far, but I think it would be a pretty neat twist. So, the second main point of discussion is the general timeline of events. We know that the body discovery announcement played when Kazuichi discovered the body, so that would make him the third person to find the body. Earlier on, when Kazuichi and Hajime were staking out the diner, we saw Hiyoko run away from the beach in tears. This kind of leads me to believe that she also witnessed Mahiru's body. And then, the very first encounter we actually had at the diner was with Fuyuhiko, who was flustered. Between those three characters all being in kind of an upset state, lead me to believe that they were the three to have triggered the body discovery announcement, and thus that would kind of prevent Fuyuhiko and Hiyoko being the killers. I think. I think that's how the rule plays out. It has to be three non-involved bodies, non-involved personnel involved in the case. And then, just in general, the fact that Fuyuhiko did have the envelope means, and if my supposition that Hiyoko played the game first and then handed it off to him, along with the second letter that we found that was on Mahiru's body, since it wasn't addressed to anyone in particular, and signed by Hiyoko, raises the possibility in my mind that Hiyoko and Fuyuhiko were involved in these events together. I also forgot to mention that when I took a look at the letter in the envelope, compared that handwriting to the handwriting on this one, although we can't see it in the evidence, to me it appeared that they were written by the same person. But I don't know if that's going to be an actual part of the trial or not, since we don't actually have that letter and how it was written in our list of evidence. But it's something else that kind of adds credence to the possibility that Hiyoko may have played the game first. And really, that's about all I've been able to really nail down in my own mind as something that's possible. The third main point of discussion is the general crime scene, but here's where things for me really start falling apart. I just don't know what happened, and I can't figure it out. based on the footprints leaving the beach side of the beach house, we can almost be certain that Hiyoko left the building last, after Mihiro was moved, because otherwise she would have gone out the other door. So Mihiro's body was blocking the door at the time Hiyoko left out the beach door. But what I can't figure out is if Fuyuhiko, Hiyoko, and Mihiru were down at the beach house all at about 2:30, and maybe a fourth party, probably the killer, in my mind. It's kind of hard to explain, and I'm having a hard time putting everything together in my mind. But the main thing is, how did the killer leave the scene without being witnessed by Hijimi and Kazuichi or Fuyuhiko? If the killer had left before Fuyuhiko, how did Fuyuhiko himself not see the killer? And also, how did Hajime and Kazuichi not see him? But if the killer left after Fuyuhiko, the problem becomes, how did they escape the beach house without leaving footprints? I suppose part of that plays into when Mihiru's body was moved, but I can't model out the timeline of events during the crime scene, and it just it's what's beaten me. Anyway, the last main point of discussion is who committed out the murder. Based on the fact that the game's kind of pushing Fuyuhiko and Hiyoko as the killers, leads me to go, it might be someone else, because that's usually how these games play out. These games are always more about figuring out who did it, rather than specifically how something was carried out. Usually those are a little more on the simplistic side, except for, in my opinion, this case. For whatever reason, this one's got me just absolutely flabbergasted. Half the evidence, I just have no idea how it applies. Anyway, the bottom line is, at this point, I'm suspecting either Peko or Sonia. Now let me run through my reasoning for this. We never saw any of the guys come up when we were staking things out. We never saw. Just the only guy we saw was Fuyuhiko, which was our first encounter, and like I said, I believe that he was one of the parties who witnessed Mihiru's body that counted towards the body discovery announcement, which would kind of preclude him from being a killer. We never saw any of the other guys, and so that primarily leaves the women. Now, Mikan and Ibuki's testimonies and alibis pretty much support each other. They showed up at the beach together. Their testimonies were reflective of each other when Mihiro went to talk to them about meeting for the game. There's just enough there to make me say that those two are tied together in the events that played out, but not necessarily tied to the murder. I believe Akane will have her alibi confirmed by Nekomaru, because she said she was fighting Nekomaru when she got hurt. And then, basically, the extreme lack of evidence really doesn't tie Chiaki to the scene at all. There's really nothing there that I see that would say, hey, be on the lookout for Chiaki. Just nothing jumps out at me. So that really primarily leaves Sonia and Peko. I suppose theoretically you could see Hiyoko, but again, that ties in with Fuyuhiko and being part of the body discovery announcement tally. And part of why, outside of just straight up elimination, I think Sonia and Peko may be involved. Either one, I don't know. I don't think both. Is the mask at the scene. The mask at the scene is kind of a red herring to say, oh, there's a serial killer on here, and they're the ones who did it. Which, seems unlikely, or in this case, there's really no way of knowing who that might be. But just the whole fact that the mask was there, there's only two people that I can think of who even know about this. So we've got Sonia, who was absolutely fascinated with Sparkling Justice, but Pekka was also around anytime Sonia was talking about Sparkling Justice, specifically at the library when the second island first opened up. And effectively, both of them lack really solid alibis. Pekko said she was out swimming for 3 hours, and really no one was with Sonia the whole time, as far as I'm aware. So, I mean, if I really had to pick one right now, I'd probably pick Pekko. But, unfortunately, I don't have much proof. And then, on a completely unrelated note, I kind of noticed this when I was going through and editing, and it's the free time events that we have with Chiaki. Like I said, this is completely unrelated to the case, but when I was looking through, there's a trend that starts to show itself when you start reading through these things really quickly. I wasn't able to connect the pieces as they played out, but when you go back and read it, she doesn't know about Girls' Day, which is supposedly something that's pretty well known in Japan. She didn't know about milk in general, which seems awfully odd. She doesn't like games and has a hard time managing relationships and guessing what people are feeling. And then she talks about she doesn't talk about a mother or knowing her mother, but she talks about her father, but in kind of a distant way, a father who is also a programmer. If I wasn't revisiting the first game, I probably would never have picked up on this, but all these trends together lead me to just think, oh my god, is she a robot? Which, if I'm calling this now, would be really, really amazing. I get the feeling I'm probably super wrong, but I think it would just be absolutely hilarious if I called this. And then, that kind of leads into my last thought about this whole situation is, if she were somehow a robot or an artificial intelligence or something like that, it's possible that she wasn't actually attending the school. And if we go way back to when Monokuma actually talked about the traitor, he was saying there were 15 students and an additional person added to the island. If that additional person was not a student, or an AI not attending the school, then I'm thinking maybe Chiaki is the traitor. Quote, traitor. So, I mean, these are just my thoughts at this point. And I know this has been kind of a bit of a waste of time, I admit. But I just wanted to get some of this. I just wanted to point some of these things out. Point out some of my thoughts before we get into the trial proper. So, in the next episode, we'll start the trial. I want to thank you guys for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Farewell.